Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. I was sitting on the toilet when my entire engagement shattered. Yeah, not exactly how you expect betrayal to find you. I had just finished brushing my teeth, pajama pants around my ankles, scrolling through Reddit mindlessly. Ironically, this exact subreddit, when my phone pinged with a voice message from Lana. I stared at the screen for a second. We rarely send voice memos to each other, and when we do, it's usually her singing dumb parody songs about Toby, our dog. I assumed it was another one of those. I hit play with my thumb, expecting to hear something cute or funny. But the first thing I heard was her voice, breathless and sharp. I honestly don't know how I haven't exploded yet. I feel like I'm drowning in dullness. Every single day with Darwin is like being buried alive in beige. My body froze. My mouth still had toothpaste residue foaming in the corner. I didn't even realize the air left the room until I started gasping for it. She kept going. He made pancakes this morning like he was filming for some cheesy couples vlog. Smiled at me like I was this magical creature who saved his life. And all I could think was, if I hear him say I love you one more time in that sad little voice, I'm gonna throw his oat milk in his face. It was meant for her sister. That much was clear. Erin. The two of them were inseparable and toxic in a way I never fully understood. But I didn't care who it was for, because it wasn't meant for me. It was about me. And it was brutal. I pulled up my pajama pants slowly, hands trembling. Press play again. I needed to hear if maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe there was context. A joke. A twist. Something. There wasn't. And last night, I faked it again. Fourth time this month. He looked so proud afterward, like he unlocked some sacred level of intimacy. It's honestly sad. I don't know how I got here. Like, is this my life? This guy? Forever? My heart did something strange then. It didn't break, it sputtered, like an engine flooding before it dies. I just sat there, toothbrush still in the sink, my name being dragged like a joke in a group chat I wasn't supposed to see. She never realized she sent it to me. Not even hours later, when we sat together eating leftover Thai food while watching The Office for the 17th time. She smiled. She touched my arm when she laughed. She let me kiss her goodnight. And the whole time, I was rotting from the inside out. I didn't confront her. I didn't cry. I just stared at the ceiling that night and listened to that message 12 more times. Each time, a new word would slap me in the face. Buried alive in beige. I painted that wall beige because she said she liked neutral tones. This wasn't just betrayal, it was exposure. Like I'd been walking around naked, thinking I was dressed in gold. All those little things I thought made me a good man. The homemade breakfasts, the long hugs, the love notes I left in her coat pockets. She'd cataloged them as weaknesses. The next morning, I packed a single duffel bag, fed the dog, and walked out. No note. No explanation. No final goodbye. But I didn't disappear. I left something behind. When I left that morning, it wasn't with some grand plan. I didn't have a dramatic movie moment where I dropped the ring into a wine glass or trashed the apartment. I just needed to get out. To breathe without her voice in my head. To think a single thought that didn't feel like it was being filtered through humiliation. I stuffed 3 t-shirts, a hoodie, my laptop, and a single photo of Toby into a duffel bag and walked out the door. I didn't even take my charger. I left behind the ring. Not in a box. Not neatly placed on the dresser. I slid it onto the neck of her favorite ceramic coffee mug, the one that said Creative Chaos in pastel letters. I knew she'd see it. That mug was her morning religion. I turned off my phone and drove 2 towns over to a cheap motel with laminate floors and buzzing lights. The guy at the front desk didn't even look up from his crossword. That was good. I didn't want to be seen. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just couldn't be inside that house for another minute. I didn't cry. I know everyone expects the guy in these stories to cry eventually, to crack, to fall apart. But I didn't. Not yet. My emotions were jammed behind some mental floodgate. Stuck in a loop of that voice memo. Her voice laughing. Her words slicing. The echo of the sentence I couldn't forget. He's not even bad. He's just invisible. Like a placeholder boyfriend I forgot to replace. Invisible. That word had its own flavor. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even contempt. It was detachment. Like I was some background character in the movie of her life, serving no purpose but to occupy a space until the real story began. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the motel bed staring at the wall, listening to traffic sounds filter through the blinds. At some point, around 4 a.m., I turned my phone back on. I expected a barrage of texts, missed calls, maybe even panic. There was nothing. No new messages. No missed calls. No, where are you? Or is everything okay? Or why is your ring on my mug? She hadn't noticed. Or worse, she had noticed and didn't care. By noon the next day, I had convinced myself she would call. Maybe she just didn't see it yet. Maybe she assumed I left for work early. But as the hours passed, reality sank its claws in deeper. She hadn't called because she didn't want to. It was one thing to hear how little she respected me. It was another to realize that my absence barely registered. After almost 4 years. After moving in together. After planning a wedding. I was replaceable. No, scratch that. I was already replaced in her heart. That afternoon, I logged into our shared Spotify account. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to feel connected to something. I checked the recently played tab. She was listening to her date night playlist. You know the one. The playlist we built together during late-night cooking sessions and Saturday wine nights. The one she jokingly called Romance Fuel. It was playing in real time on a device labeled living room speaker. I blinked. Someone was over. Not her sister. Erin hated that playlist. No, Lana was entertaining someone. Maybe for dinner. Maybe for something else. I stared at the screen as if it would give me details, a name, a timestamp, a warning. But all it gave me was one single song title. Lie to Me, by an artist I didn't recognize. I laughed. A dry, bitter noise that didn't even sound like me. That was when the emotion finally cracked through. I didn't sob or scream or throw a chair. I just curled up on the motel mattress like a man returning to the womb and whispered 3 words into the pillow. She moved on. It was raining when I went back. Not a poetic drizzle, either. The kind of aggressive, sideways rain that makes everything feel personal. I didn't have an umbrella. Didn't want one. I let the water soak into my hoodie, drip down the back of my neck, and cling to my skin like guilt. Maybe I thought if I let the sky punish me enough, it would balance the humiliation chewing through my ribs. It had been 42 hours since I left the house without a word. I waited that long on purpose. 2 nights in a motel. 2 mornings eating gas station breakfast sandwiches and staring at the ceiling fan like it owed me an apology. I was testing something. Not her, not really. I was testing gravity. Seeing if the absence of one man could shift anything in the orbit of someone who once claimed to love him. It didn't. She never called. Never texted. Never even pinged me about Toby, who I left with 3 days' worth of food and an aching heart. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I wasn't even nervous. I was numb in a way I didn't know existed. I walked up the steps of the porch, rain soaking through my sneakers, and rang the doorbell like a stranger delivering bad news. The sound of footsteps inside. Then the door opened, and there she was, Lana, wearing one of my t-shirts, the gray one she used to steal on purpose because it was soft and smelled like peace. Her hair was up in a messy bun. No makeup. A half-drunk mug of coffee in her hand. She looked at me and smiled. Smiled. Oh, she said, her voice light. You're back. No gasp. No panic. No, where the hell have you been? Just a casual welcome like I'd returned from a walk around the block. I didn't answer right away. I studied her face like it was a crime scene. Every little expression, every flicker of emotion, or lack thereof. And then I said the first honest thing that came to mind. Did you notice I left? She tilted her head and furrowed her brow, like I'd asked her a riddle. I assumed you went to your parents' place or something. You didn't say anything. That was the point, I replied, stepping inside without waiting for permission. The house smelled like citrus and something else, something unfamiliar. Cologne. Expensive, woody, masculine. Definitely not mine. My stomach turned, but I didn't show it. Not yet. Toby ran toward me, tail wagging violently, and I dropped to one knee, burying my face into his fur. He whimpered like he'd been holding his breath for days. That dog was the only creature in that house who noticed I was missing. Lana closed the door behind me and leaned against it, arms crossed. Are you okay? She asked, her tone measured. Not worried. More curious. I stood up slowly, dripping water onto the hardwood floors she used to obsessively swiffer. I heard the voice memo. She blinked. That was it. No gasp. No scrambling for excuses. Oh, she said again. That, I repeated. My voice cracked a little. I hated that. She took a sip of her coffee. Look, Darwin, I didn't mean for you to hear it. It was just venting. I was frustrated. Aaron was pushing my buttons, and I let some things slip. Slip? I echoed, laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh. You called me oatmeal, Lana. I didn't mean. You said I was invisible. That you fake it. That I'm not your real life. Just the dress rehearsal. That got her. Her mouth tightened slightly. Her eyes darted away for a second, the way they do when she's calculating how much truth she's willing to admit. I was being dramatic, she said finally. I didn't think you'd actually hear it. But you thought it, I said. You lived in it. You built a life with me on one side of your mouth and tore me down with the other. She didn't reply, just stared at me like I was inconveniencing her. That's when I pulled out the envelope. A single, thick envelope. Sealed. I held it up between us. What's that? She asked, her voice tightening. My answer, I said. To your performance review. I handed it to her. She hesitated, then took it. I didn't stay to watch her open it. I didn't explain what was inside, not yet. I just looked at her one last time and said, check the last page. Then I turned around, opened the door, and walked back into the rain. Behind me, silence. Not a question, not a protest, but I know she read it. Because that night, I got a message. Not from her, from someone else. And what they sent me changed everything. I drove aimlessly for hours after leaving the house. No destination, no music, just the sound of wet tires on pavement and the occasional hum of my turn signal when I changed lanes without thinking. The envelope I gave Lana, she'd opened it by now. I imagined her face twisting in confusion, then panic, then whatever version of regret she was capable of producing when no one was watching. Inside that envelope wasn't a letter. No poetic monologue. No dramatic breakup note. Just printouts. Screenshots. A copy of the voice memo transcribed word for word. A detailed list of every shared password I'd just revoked. Streaming services, banking access, utilities, cloud storage, gone. I even logged her out of our grocery delivery app. Call it petty. Call it calculated. Call it whatever you want. But if I was invisible, then so was every convenience I brought with me. The last page was the only one I signed. For words underlined 3 times in black ink. You don't know me. Because that was the part that hurt the most. She thought she knew everything about me. That I was simple, soft, someone who would cry quietly and never leave. Even when she talked about me like I was wallpaper. She was wrong. But as satisfying as that moment should have been, I wasn't at peace. Not even close. Something still didn't add up. Not emotionally, but practically. Why hadn't she contacted me? Why hadn't she fought for anything? Why didn't she at least pretend to be sorry? It was almost like she'd been waiting for this. That thought stayed with me the rest of the day. It followed me into the next motel. This one was slightly nicer, which only made the emptiness feel worse. I showered. I changed into fresh clothes. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the TV that I never turned on, when my phone buzzed with a message request from a number I didn't recognize. It was a text with one line. You don't know what she's been hiding. But I do. I stared at the screen, heart thudding louder than it should have. No name. No context. No attachments. Just those 12 words, hitting harder than a punch. I responded carefully. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. A minute passed. Then 2. Finally, another message came through. I didn't mean to get involved. I swear. But I need to tell you something. Can we talk? For a brief second, I thought it was Erin, Lana's sister. Maybe she'd had a change of heart. Maybe the guilt had cracked through her smug exterior. But something told me this wasn't Erin. The tone didn't match. This person didn't sound defensive. They sounded scared. I replied, call me. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. No caller ID. I answered on the first ring and said nothing. A man's voice came through the speaker. Hesitant. Tired. Familiar in a way that made my stomach flip before I could place it. Is this Darwin? I cleared my throat. Yeah. He was silent for a beat, then said, I've been seeing Lana. I didn't know she was engaged. Not until recently. I didn't speak. My body went rigid. I met her through a gallery showing. She said she was single, just out of something messy. I believed her. We've been. He paused, like the weight of what he was saying finally registered. We've been together for about 3 months. I closed my eyes. 3 months. That covered the entire period after our engagement. She had been planning a wedding with me while sleeping with someone else. Someone who was now calling me to apologize for something I didn't even know existed until 2 minutes ago. I only found out who you were because I saw a playlist on her Spotify," he continued, voice shaking slightly. The one she said was hers. But it had a weird name, like a code. Tuesday Hearts. I Googled it. It's connected to your name, to your Reddit account. That's how I found you. I said nothing. She said she made it with you years ago, but we've been listening to it together. That's when it hit me, the song. Lie to me. It wasn't an accident. She played it on purpose. That playlist was still linked to my account. I'd seen it playing in real time, and this was the man on the other side of it. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally. He exhaled hard. I think she's done this before. I think I'm not the first. And I think you should see something she sent me 2 weeks ago. It wasn't meant for me either." "What was it?" "A recording. Like the one you got." Another pause. Then he added, "But this one's not just about you. It's about someone else. Someone she says she's waiting for." And just like that, the floor fell out again. Because for all the betrayal I thought I understood, there was a deeper truth forming underneath it, one I hadn't even begun to suspect. I told him to send the file. And when I heard it, the real secret Lana had been hiding, I knew this wasn't just a broken engagement. It was a pattern, and I wasn't her first victim. When the file came through, I hesitated to open it. I wasn't afraid of the words, not anymore. I was past heartbreak, past anger. What scared me now was the possibility that I'd barely scratched the surface of who Lana really was. What if all this time, I hadn't just misjudged a person, but misread my entire life? What if this man, this stranger who called me shaking, knew more about my fiancée than I ever did? His name, by the way, was Clay. I didn't ask for it. He just offered it mid-conversation like a confession, like a man trying to atone for sins he didn't even know he'd committed. He sounded younger than me, maybe late 20s. I could tell from the way he said "man" at the end of every other sentence. Nervous habit. Probably thought I was going to drive over and beat the truth out of him. He had no idea. I don't even know how to throw a punch. When I opened the audio file, I didn't expect much. Maybe a repeat of the same venom she'd spewed in the one she accidentally sent me. I assumed it'd be more mockery, more contempt, more of her peeling off my identity layer by layer like old paint. I was wrong. This one wasn't about me. It was about someone else. I hit play and sat down at the motel desk, staring at the no smoking sign on the wall like it had answers. Her voice came through crisp and clear. She must have been somewhere quiet. No background noise, no wind. She spoke softly, intimately, like a diary entry whispered into a phone. "So, I've been thinking about it again. About him. About how it could have gone if I hadn't met Darwin first. I know that sounds awful, but it's the truth. He was the one. He is the one. And it's like, I don't know, like I was 2 steps ahead of fate and tripped into the wrong storyline." I leaned in, the room suddenly colder. I tried to be happy with Darwin. I really did. I gave him my best smile, my softest lies. I let him love me the way boring men do, with routine and comfort and guilt-tripped kindness. But the more he tried, the more I felt like I was dying. She paused. "Clay reminds me of him. Not Darwin, the real one. The one I lost. The one I left before everything became so safe. Clay's got that chaos I used to crave. He's fire. He doesn't fold under politeness. He looks at me like I'm something dangerous, not something fragile. That's what I miss. That's what I want." I stopped the audio and sat back. My stomach turned. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was chasing a ghost. A man she built out of memories and regrets. And I was just the bystander standing too close to the wreckage. I hit play again. I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to leave Darwin. But I need to do it the right way. I need him to think it's his idea. If I can just push him a little harder, maybe he'll walk first. Maybe I won't have to be the villain this time. She laughed, not loudly, just enough to chill me. And if he doesn't? Well, I've got stories. No one's going to believe a man like him could keep a woman like me happy. I'll be out clean. I paused it again, this time because I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just betrayal. This was design. She had mapped it all out. A psychological slow kill. She'd been preparing for my exit, emotionally and logistically. And worse, she'd done it before. That was the real reason she hadn't panicked when I left. That was why the ring on her mug didn't rattle her. She'd already decided I was gone. She just hadn't gotten around to telling me yet. But now that Clay knew, now that he heard that message, too, I had an ally. Not a friend. Not even an accomplice. Just someone else whose illusion had shattered loud enough to wake him up. We talked for another hour. He told me about the weekend trips, about the paintings Lana claimed she'd sold that never actually left the apartment, about how she used the same compliments with him that she used with me, word for word. We shared screenshots. We synced timelines. We built a map of her deception in real time, like putting together a jigsaw puzzle where every piece smelled like betrayal. And then he said something that stuck with me more than anything else that night. She doesn't love either of us, Darwin. She's not even capable. She just collects men the way other people collect souvenirs, reminders of who she used to be with someone else. That hit me in a place I didn't know existed. Because I realized, in that moment, Lana didn't destroy me because she hated me. She destroyed me because I was available, because I was willing, because I stayed. But not anymore. Clay and I made a decision. Not for revenge, not for drama, for clarity. We were going to confront her, together, not to yell, not to accuse, to listen, because there was one more voice memo Clay hadn't opened yet, and it was recorded 3 days before I proposed. We didn't play it right away. Clay and I sat on opposite ends of a phone call for several minutes, the final audio message sitting between us like a grenade with the pin already half pulled. Neither of us wanted to be the one to press play, but both of us knew we needed to. It wasn't about curiosity anymore. It was about closure. Whatever was in that message was going to be ugly. We'd come to expect that, but we didn't realize it was going to rewire the timeline of everything we thought we understood. When we finally decided to do it, we kept the call going. He played it through a speaker so I could hear it live. No edits. No pauses. Just raw Lana, recorded 3 days before I proposed. Her voice came through with eerie clarity. There was no nervousness in her tone. No excitement. Just calculation. Okay, so I have a theory. If I say yes, I get time. If I say no, I lose control of the story. I froze. Clay didn't say a word. He's going to propose. I can feel it. He's been all jittery and sweet and full of that. I have a surprise but don't know how to hide it energy. And I should be thrilled, right? But I'm not. I'm just disappointed. Like, deep-bone disappointed. She sighed heavily. I don't want to be someone's best choice when they're not mine. But here's the thing. Darwin is safe. Safe in the kind of way that makes your parents love him and your friends say you're lucky. And maybe I could be okay with that, if I didn't already know what it felt like to burn for someone. She stopped. The silence lingered. Then came the sentence that made my hands curl into fists. But if I say no, he'll be heartbroken. And I don't want to hurt him. I just want to stay in control long enough to figure out what I really want. So she said yes. Not because she loved me, not because she saw a future, but because it was strategically easier than saying no. I was a buffer. A pause button on the chaos she wasn't ready to admit she missed. Clay lowered the volume as the audio crackled for a second. I thought it was over, but then her voice came back, softer this time, almost confessional. I'll let him think it's his fairy tale for a while. Then, when I'm ready, I'll make it about me again. I always do. Men like Darwin, they give. They pour and pour and pour, and when they run dry, they apologize for not having more. That line, that sentence, it lit something in me I'd never felt before. Not rage, not even grief. It was clarity, cold and sharp, because she was right. That's exactly what I'd been doing. Every time she pulled away emotionally, I gave more. Every time she made me feel small, I tried harder. I mistook her distance for my failure. I thought if I just kept loving her harder, she'd finally see me. But she never even looked. And now I was listening to the proof. A digital recording of my own dehumanization, time-stamped 3 days before the happiest moment of my life, or what I thought was the happiest moment. The audio ended. Clay exhaled audibly on the other end. We didn't speak for a while. Then he said, quietly, "She's dangerous, man." I didn't argue, because he was right, but not in the way most people mean that word. Lana wasn't violent. She wasn't unstable. She wasn't some Hollywood version of a manipulative villain. She was composed, charming, strategic. She could dismantle a person without ever raising her voice. And now I was beginning to see the whole picture. I wasn't her first casualty. Clay wasn't her first detour. There were others. And I had a feeling that message, that voice memo, wasn't made for her sister or for herself. It was made to exist, to be there, to be found, as a kind of breadcrumb trail for anyone who got too close. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with my laptop and went back through every photo, every trip, every playlist, every moment I documented with her. Not to relive it, to dissect it, I was looking for tells, patterns, recycled phrases, repeated behaviors, moments that didn't line up with the memory I'd assigned to them. And I found them. Photos that felt staged. Notes she reused on birthdays. The exact same dinner date we'd had on our second anniversary had been posted, weeks later, on a gallery page belonging to a man I didn't recognize, with the caption, "My favorite night with her." She had copied and pasted romance. She didn't love me. She performed as if she did. That distinction matters, because it meant Lana didn't just lie to me. She trained me to love her version of love. And now, finally, I was out of the trance. But I still had one last question clawing at my spine. What was she really waiting for? Because if Clay was a substitute and I was a placeholder, who was the original? I spent the next 2 days obsessed. Not angry, not crying, just consumed. There's a point you reach in grief where the pain plateaus. You're no longer spiraling. You're floating just above the wreckage, surveying it with cold detachment. That's where I was. My heart had already shattered. Now I was picking through the pieces to see what they were actually made of. And the deeper I dug, the more I realized something unsettling. I was never the story. I was a detour. Lana had been orbiting someone else the entire time, and all her love, if you can even call it that, was just misdirected gravity. It started with a name. In one of the memos Clay sent me, not a full voice message, just a passing reference, she'd mentioned someone named Micah. She said it like a scar. You know how someone can say a name and suddenly their tone shifts? It was like that. She wasn't angry. She wasn't nostalgic. She was reverent. Micah would have understood, she had whispered. That's all she said. But that one sentence had weight. A weight I didn't recognize when I first heard it. But now, it stuck like a splinter under my skin. I remembered hearing that name before. Once, we were watching a documentary about architecture, and the narrator mentioned someone named Micah Walters, a mid-career designer from Chicago who'd made a name for himself by creating these emotionally charged, brutalist-inspired spaces. Lana had gone completely still. Not impressed. Not curious. Just still. Then she'd mumbled, "He used to sketch on napkins like that." I asked her what she meant, and she brushed it off. Said it reminded her of someone she knew in college. An old almost, she'd said. Don't worry. He's just a ghost. A ghost. Now, for years later, I was chasing that ghost down a rabbit hole I never even knew existed. I found him on Instagram first. A blue-check guy, lots of black and white photos, dramatic captions, interviews clipped from obscure art podcasts. He was handsome in that timeless way. Clean-shaven. Long fingers. The kind of man who makes you feel underdressed just by existing in your feed. He hadn't posted much recently. Only one photo in the last few months. A sketch of a faceless woman sitting in front of a fire escape. The caption read, "Some shapes never leave you." That was enough to light the fuse. I scrolled through his followers. Lana wasn't on the list. Neither was Aaron. But I checked who liked that photo. And there she was. Lana's personal burner account. One she swore she deleted years ago when we first moved in together. An account I hadn't seen in 4 years. The handle was a blend of letters and numbers, but the profile photo was unmistakably hers. The same one from a film camera we used on our trip to San Francisco. The one where she's wearing my hoodie and smiling like the world just gave her permission to exist. She'd been following him all along, liking his posts, commenting on his stories, subtle things, nothing romantic, nothing obvious, but always present, always watching. I felt my hands go cold. I knew what this meant. I wasn't competing with a man. I was competing with a myth. Micah wasn't in her life anymore, at least not in the physical sense. But emotionally, spiritually, she never let him go. Every man since him, me, Clay, maybe others, we were all runners-up in a game none of us even knew we were playing. I kept digging. Turns out, Lana and Micah had been together briefly during college. 2 years. He moved to Chicago. She stayed behind. The classic fork-in-the-road story, except something in her never detached. I found an old forum post buried on a now-dead Tumblr thread where someone asked him about the muse that got away. His reply was short. She burned brighter than the places I was building. That was it. But I didn't need more. I suddenly understood the whole framework of our relationship. The patterns, the hesitations, the restless eyes when we were in bed. She had been measuring me against a phantom, trying to reconstruct what she lost using parts that didn't fit. I was never loved. I was assembled into an idea she thought might replace the thing she left behind. And she was waiting. waiting for Micah to either reappear or for me to disappear. Either way, she was never planning to stay. That night, I stared at the ceiling of the motel room and asked myself a question I should have asked years ago. Why did I need her to love me? What was I trying to prove by holding on to someone who had already emotionally vacated the premises? The answer was simple and horrifying. Because I didn't think I deserved more. Because I confused loyalty with worthiness. Because I thought endurance was the same thing as love. But I was wrong. And now, I had one thing left to do. Clay and I agreed to meet in person. We didn't know what we were walking into. We just knew Lana needed to be confronted. Not attacked. Not screamed at. But seen. She had spent years hiding in half-truths, letting her feelings rot behind carefully managed expressions and Instagram filters. She thought she controlled the story. She was wrong. The knock on her door sounded like thunder in my chest. Clay stood beside me, quiet but steady. We didn't plan what to say. We didn't rehearse or write speeches. We weren't there to humiliate or accuse. We were just there to show up, as witnesses, as survivors, as men who had both lived in a house made of Lana's version of love and walked out intact, even if bruised. It was early evening. Her apartment was in a new building downtown, the kind with faux brick walls and tall windows made to impress first dates. We could hear music playing faintly inside, jazz, or something like it. When the door opened, the music got louder, and so did her silence. She looked at us the way someone might look at a mirror that suddenly grew a mouth and spoke back. Shocked, exposed, not scared, not ashamed, just caught. She didn't ask what we were doing there. She didn't say a word. I took a step forward and held up a small envelope. Another one. This time, thinner. This is for you, I said, my voice calm. No notes. No audio. Just the truth. She took it slowly. Her hand didn't shake. She looked at Clay, then back at me. You coordinated this? I nodded. We talked. We compared stories. You left pieces of yourself all over the place. We just started collecting them. Her eyes flickered, but still, no apology came. I wasn't waiting for one. Not anymore. She had given me something far more valuable than closure. She gave me the blueprint of the kind of love I would never accept again. You know, I added, I spent a long time thinking I wasn't enough for you. That if I had just been more spontaneous, more confident, more chaotic, you might have stayed. She said nothing, but her eyes softened just a little, not in guilt, but maybe recognition. But the truth is, I continued, you were never looking for someone to love. You were looking for someone to reenact the past with. Someone to wear the costume of a man you never stopped mourning. Clay stepped beside me then. You didn't love either of us. You loved what we made you feel about yourself. Her face hardened at that. She started to respond, maybe defend, maybe deflect, but I stopped her. It's okay, I said. You don't owe us anything anymore. We're not here for explanations. She nodded once, eyes dropping to the envelope. For the first time, her composure cracked. Not a lot, just a flicker, but it was there. We left without another word. There was no dramatic exit, no shouting match, no begging. Just the hallway door clicking shut behind us as we stepped into the elevator. Clay and I stood in silence for most of the ride down, but when the doors opened to the lobby, we both exhaled at the same time. It was over, and for the first time in what felt like years, I felt weightless. We grabbed coffee afterward, sat outside a quiet cafe under string lights, and talked about things that had nothing to do with her. He told me about a mural project he'd been meaning to start. I told him I used to sketch maps of imaginary cities when I was a kid. We laughed, not because we were healed, but because we were finally healing. That night, I didn't go back to the motel. I drove to the coast, watched the ocean breathe in and out like it was reminding me how. I stayed for 2 days. No plans, no social media, just me, a notebook, and the sound of something bigger than any of this. When I got home, I made changes. I got a new apartment. Smaller, quieter. Just me and Toby. I bought a record player. Started journaling. I even signed up for a class, something I never told Lana I wanted to do. Urban sketching, ironically. I figured if I was always going to carry these memories, I might as well draw them with my own lines. I don't think about her much anymore. When I do, it's not with hatred, not even sadness. It's just a reminder that survival is its own kind of victory. That some people enter your life like storms, but not all storms are meant to be outrun. Some are meant to wash you clean. So, to anyone out there reading this, who's been ghosted by love, hollowed out by charm, or left asking if you were too much or not enough. You were always enough. You just gave it to the wrong person. But the right ones? They'll never make you beg to be seen.